Hey everyone, I hope y'all are having a great day, and today I'll be talking about For, a Divergent Collection by Queen Veronica, aka Veronica Roth. It's a lot thinner than I thought it was going to be. I wish it was a lot longer, but I mean, they are just novellas compiled, so. It's very short, and in classic Divergent style, it has an image printed onto the cloth back, and this is a Ferris wheel, which, by the way, I don't know if you can read my shirt, but it's a Ferris wheel. It's a quote from Divergent that Tobias tells Tris. It says, "It's learning how to control your fear and how to be free from it." I don't wear this Divergent shirt as often as I wear my other one, but I was like, it's a really good opportunity today because for Ferris wheel, it's like the same. Yeah, okay, more about the book now. For those who don't know, this is a collection of 4 short stories written in Tobias's point of view, ranging from his choosing ceremony to the events of Divergent. The 4 short stories are called The Transfer, The Initiate, The Sun, and The Traitor. Though I think when you read the book, they kind of blend together to form one big story. I would say this collection is definitely a must-read for Divergent fans, and this review will probably have mild spoilers for the entire Divergent trilogy, so if you haven't read all 3 of the Divergent books, I would suggest leaving now. Like, right now. Also, I feel like if you haven't read all 3 books, you're probably not a big fan of the trilogy, and if you're not a fan of the trilogy, you're not interested in this book. Alright, so I feel like a lot of people kind of assume that my favorite fictional male is Tobias, that he's my favorite book boyfriend, but he's not. I mean, I loved him in Divergent, but then over the course of the series, I grew more and more frustrated with him, and I liked him less and less. However, I was still excited for this book because I will read anything Queen Veronica writes. And while I don't love For, I still like him. I think he's a complex character. And overall, I really enjoyed this book. It made me happy and sad at the same time. It made me happy because it was like revisiting Divergent almost for the first time with a different set of eyes. But then it made me sad because a lot of the time it reminded me too much of Divergent, reminded me too much of Tris, and that always gets me teary-eyed. I reviewed The Transfer, which is the first of the 4 short stories, when it first came out in like September of last year, I think. And at the time I was so excited for the 4 short stories because they were written in Tobias's point of view, and at that time we didn't have anything in Tobias's point of view except for the Free 4 short story, which was only like a couple of pages. Allegiant hadn't been released yet, so we didn't have half of a book in his point of view, and we also didn't get to see how whiny he was. But anyway, I think there are very, very subtle differences between Tobias's narrative and Tris's narrative. I think Tobias has a bit more of a poetic flow to his words, whereas Tris is very, very straight to the point and choppy. That being said, they're still very, very similar in their writing styles. So much so that while I was reading the very last short story, which is The Traitor, I would sometimes forget and slip into my Divergent mindset, and then when I realized that I wasn't reading Divergent and that I was reading in Tobias's point of view, everything hurt again. For and Tris themselves are extremely similar characters, but I feel like at the same time they're also very, very different. Of course, I prefer Tris because how could you ever prefer Tobias when Tris is constantly outshining him and every other character ever? All the time. But anyway, I already reviewed The Transfer, so I won't spend too much time talking about it. Basically, I just liked comparing Tobias's experience in the choosing ceremony to Tris's, and how Tris was first jumper and Tobias was last jumper. I'll move on to The Initiate, which details For's initiation process. I liked it well enough. I liked seeing Amar because we know what's up with him in Allegiant. Also, For's friendship with Zeke and Shauna was pretty nice. Although it's a little bit strange that he was friends with Dauntlessborn when he was a transfer, but then again, their initiation process was different, so there's that. What was interesting to me was Tobias learning how to conquer his fears the Dauntless way rather than the Divergent way because Janine watched his fear landscape. It was like how it is in the movie, but I'll touch more on that later. The next short story is The Sun, which I thought was really insightful and really interesting. For is already dauntless now, and he's figuring out his jobs, and he's uncovering all these secrets. And is it just me, or was it really easy for him to find out what was going on with Max and Janine and Eric? Perhaps he's just an extremely perceptive person, but it felt like there was no resistance to his snooping whatsoever. Also, I actually forgot that Tobias knew his mother was alive. Like, I knew it was going to be Evelyn that gave him the note that he was going to meet at the train compound, because in the previous short story it ended with Tobias seeing a glimpse of his mother. But I was like, wait, how does this correlate? I thought Tobias thought his mother was dead, and he was surprised to see her in Insurgent. Then after finishing reading this book, I went back to Insurgent and I found where Tobias is like, oh yeah, I knew she was alive. She sent me this coded message like a year ago. I'm dumb. I forget things. Also, it's been a really, really long time since I read Insurgent. One of my favorite scenes from The Sun was when Zeke set 4 up on that double date. It was hilarious. 4 is so awkward. But I mean, to give 4 a little bit more credit, Nicole was also extremely unforgiving. 4's like, that's not what I said. I'm really terrible at this. She's like, yeah, you are. And walks off. Just, oh 4, so smooth. I think everyone's short story is probably going to be the last one, the Traitor, because it's kind of just like reading Divergent, but from Tobias's point of view. It's like Midnight Sun for the Divergent trilogy. It's probably my favorite too. Of course, I will always think that being in Triss's head is infinitely times more interesting than being in Tobias's, but I really appreciate the way Veronica knows Tobias's character extremely well. Like, if you don't know, Veronica originally drafted Divergent with Tobias as the main character, but quickly she found out that him being the protagonist didn't work well for her story, so she changed to Triss. But I feel like Veronica has always had a good understanding and a good grasp on Tobias's character. Force's story doesn't revolve around Triss. Like, when Triss isn't present, Force still has stuff going on in his life. Like, Veronica always knows what he's doing, even if he's not on page in Divergent. Also, we get to see things that Triss doesn't get to see, like how Tobias settled things with Peter. Reading the Fortress interactions through Tobias's point of view was actually really, really cute. I have a really strange opinion on the Fortress ship, because on the one hand I think they're too similar to have a good relationship, and then on the other I feel like they disagree at every moment. I think they're extremely strong individually, and I feel like sometimes they bring out the best in each other, but sometimes they bring each other down. Sometimes they just act completely dysfunctional. But then again, I still ship them because I can't even imagine them being with someone other than each other. Like, can you? And I had people tell me Tobias and Christina totally had a thing going on at the end of Allegiant, and I was like gagging all over the place. Like, are you reading the same characters as I am? I read a lot of The Traitor with Divergent open as well, and I liked following both stories from both books. I think it's so fascinating to see the same story in 2 different perspectives. Like, for me, it didn't seem repetitive at all. It just made me really, really want to reread Divergent. But considering how I barely made it through this book without sobbing, I don't think I'm ready. I don't think I'm quite ready for this. And then I'm gonna mention Midnight Sun again because, like I said, I really, really like reading the same story from 2 different point of views. Kind of. Like, I can't even tell you how many times I've read the partial draft of Midnight Sun. I can't help but feel like Queen Veronica wrote at least the 3 later short stories after watching the film, because Queen Veronica is a lot more definitive with physical attributes in this book than she is in any of the other books. In this one, she defines hair color so easily, which is something that's never been done before in the trilogy. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but a fan told Veronica that she never specified Tobias's hair color in the first book. And she was like, wait, what? And she looked back, and no, all she said was that For's hair was dark. So I think when she wrote Insurgent, she kept that in mind, and she mentioned that For's hair was brown. But yeah, in this book, it mentions that Janine's blonde and Edward's blonde. And in Triss's first hallucination with all the crows, it says that the setting is like eerily beautiful. The sky is yellow and green, and the grass is completely still, which is exactly how it looks in the movie. So I feel like either the Divergent director asked Veronica how she pictured it and then created it like that, or Veronica wrote it after she watched the film and was like, I like that, I'm gonna put it into the short story. And of course there's also the thing about Tobias learning how to conquer his fears the Dauntless way instead of the Divergent way, just like he does in the movie, which by the way isn't in Divergent the book. So yeah, I feel like Veronica incorporated some movie details into this. Overall, I really, really enjoyed this book. Of course, I would have liked it more if it was in Triss's point of view, but that makes no sense because we already have her complete story. Okay, saying that makes me feel kind of sad, remembering that her story is definitively complete. Like, there can never be anything after. It's like I want to make myself cry. Please tell me your thoughts on 4. I would love to know. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day and happy reading. Goodbye! What was really interesting to me was that Tobias had to learn how to conquer his fears the dauntless way instead of the divergent way because of Janine watching his thingy.